Hey, good evening, everyone. This is Mike, and I'm back for another chapter of Movies from A to Z. And today we're doing the letter H. And I've chosen this cult film, very strange little movie from 1968 called Head, which is part of this Criterion Collection package, America Lost and Found, the BBS Story. A nice little collection of films from the late 60s, early 70s. And of course, BBS stands for the names of the men who had this little film group going and produced and directed these movies: Bob Rafelson, Bert Schneider, and Steve Blauner. Now, this movie was directed by Bob Rafelson, who also co-wrote with Jack Nicholson. And a very strange little movie. Of course, now this stars the Monkees, the stars of the TV show that ran from 1966 to 1968. And Rafelson had been involved as one of the creative people behind the Monkees during its entire run. Now, of course, the Monkees, an amazing pop success in the late 60s. They were four actors who were put on television playing a band modeled after the Beatles. That's what they were trying to achieve, and it worked beautifully. It was a sitcom that had a lot of slapstick comedy, and the guys were very funny, the way they bounced off of each other, and they could all sing, and some of them could play instruments, but the music was pretty much manufactured in a studio, written by other people, not the Monkees themselves, but they used the voices of the four guys, all of whom were good singers. So, and eventually the Monkees did start to play their instruments on at least one of their albums, but that was during the time when their popularity was starting to decline just a little bit and the TV show was about to be canceled. So Bob Rafelson decided that he wanted to make a film sort of deconstructing the image of the Monkees and using it as a way of sort of critiquing the pop culture of the time, television, films, and putting in a lot of anti-war images. I mean, this is the late 60s. The Vietnam War was raging, so there was a lot of countercultural anger toward the establishment, and of course television was basically part of the establishment. So Rafelson wanted to do something totally off the wall, and the Monkees were going along with it. This whole thing sort of came into existence after a long weekend. Rafelson and Jack Nicholson and the four Monkees and some of the other creative team, they all went up to some retreat in the woods somewhere, and they dropped acid, and they came up with all these ideas. And Jack Nicholson supposedly had never known anything about the Monkees until he started doing this film. So I don't know if that's true, but that's what Rafelson said in the interview. But so what we have here is the Monkees just trying to take their squeaky clean TV image and turn it around on top of its head, and hopefully be able to take that image and push it away from them so they can move on and have a continued career after the TV show is over. And that's what they were trying to do. It's very funny in a lot of places, but it's also it has a lot of dramatic imagery. They put in film clips from the news depicting what was going on in the Vietnam War. They have images of military and bombs and shootings and all that, while at the same time they segue into comedy skits about the four guys being in a war and running from the police and all this sort of thing. So everything is mixed in together. It's very strange. It's a series of vignettes that don't seem to have any real connection to each other. They're all just giving the Monkees a chance to perform and sort of play against their own image. And there are a lot of interesting people who show up in the film. We have Sonny Liston, the fighter. He's in a long scene with Davy Jones where they're fighting in the ring. Guess who wins? That's interesting. Annette Funicello was in it. She is also in that same sequence with Davy Jones as a fighter. She's in it for maybe 2 minutes. Let's see, Victor Mature has a very interesting part in it, and Timothy Carey, the sort of maverick actor from the 50s and 60s who was known as just being a real crazy guy. He's in it quite a bit. Frank Zappa shows up. Terry Garr shows up. A woman named Carol Doda, who was well known at the time in LA for being one of the first topless dancers, and she's in it for about a couple of minutes. Who else? There's a sequence where they're doing a dramatic comedy, sort of a comedy dramatic scene in a typical diner, sort of like a 50s and 60s diner with all the old-fashioned photographs and the machines and all that sort of thing. And the waitress behind the counter is a drag queen who looks like Joan Blondell, has a Joan Blondell wig on, and yet he's doing a Bette Davis accent for some strange reason. So this woman is interacting with Peter Tork, and then at some point Peter Tork gets up and punches her out and knocks her down. And then Bob Rafelson yells, "Cut!" And he walks in with all the camera guys, and everybody's milling around, and he and Peter Tork are all of a sudden, they're talking out of character, and Jack Nicholson walks in and he's talking to the director, and then all of a sudden Dennis Hopper walks through and he's just kind of talking, and it's this strange collage of images and scenes and things which don't seem to make a hell of a lot of sense. And when the movie came out, it was a big failure. Unfortunately, nobody knew what to make of it. They didn't really know how to market it. For a while, they were marketing it as a movie that had nothing to do with the Monkees. I think they were afraid that if people knew the Monkees were in it, they wouldn't want to see it. But it disappeared from theaters very quickly. And it does have music in the film. Now, I actually think the music is very good. It's not a concert film, although there is one sort of a brief scene where the Monkees are going up on stage and they are playing in concert, and they're doing a song written by Mike Nesmith. And two of the songs are written by Peter Tork. One song is written by Gary Goffin and Carole King, and another song is written by Carole King and someone else. And I think there's one more song, and I can't remember who wrote that one. But the music is actually very good. And what else do I want to say? It didn't do the job for the Monkees. They never escaped the image of the TV show, and they had a pretty difficult time during all those years when they were trying to establish other kinds of careers. And about the only one who really made a success as a musician was Mike Nesmith. He put together a band. He wrote a lot of music, made several albums, and then eventually got into making video. And of course, the Monkees never really went away. They always reunited, and now two of them are no longer with us, which is very sad. I would recommend this to anybody who's just a little bit curious. If you heard about this, not sure, it's fascinating to watch. I mean, there's just so much in it. It's funny, the movie is only 85 minutes long, but I have to say, it seems a lot longer. Now, that sounds like a negative thing to say. You should, when you're enjoying a film, it should be going on way too fast and it's over before you know it. This seems like a longer film to me, and maybe I just need to watch it a few more times, but I really like it, and I would definitely recommend it if you have any curiosity whatsoever. If you want to see something nice and psychedelic from the late 60s and get all that ambiance and a lot more that you were not expecting, Head, 1968. I was 17. Oh my God.